The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. Nā mai, haere mai, and welcome to Sarah's Country. I'm your host, Sarah Perriam, and we produce this show in alliance with the fantastic team at Farmers Weekly, where we bring you the matters that matter most to those who are farming food and fashion in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Our last show for the week, and of course Māori Language Week. I haven't put a lot into it, but I certainly have tried the odd bit here and there, and certainly it has been evolving and seeing it across my social medias. So congratulations to all of those agricultural brands that have been getting in behind it. Now, I just want to move on to something in particular with COVID-19 that is saddening me. It's a loss, like a drop of flies, which is our agricultural events. Locally here, the Ellesmere show, I understand, was about to celebrate 150 years at Leaston. No longer. The Ashburton AMP shows announced that it is cancelled, and the domino effect is a huge worry. We had the loss of the New Zealand Agricultural Show, formerly the Canterbury Show, earlier in the year. You know, it's sort of one of those, when is it going to stop? Because we all know you've got the busy lambing, busy calving. These types of events are those opportunities to get off farm. I'm seeing some great opportunities for bark-ups and the likes that are coming out. But to be an event manager right now in this country, I absolutely feel for you, not only for the uncertainty of the event and, of course, from a financial perspective, but for the community, because if we don't have these moments of connection after a period of lockdown, of course, over winter as well, you know, what it does for our mental health and the ability to stay connected in a community, and particularly in rural New Zealand, is super important. So here's hoping that we can turn the tide. Level 1 potentially will go ahead across majority of New Zealand on Monday and can resume some of these and provide some certainty. But how? The words certainty and COVID don't go hand in hand now, do they? I was just thinking about it though, and what I'd really enjoy to be able to talk about in the comments, wherever you are listening or watching live of Sarah's Country across the web, is what is your favourite local AMP show? Because I know there's so much patriotism to your local AMP show. I've been roped in to MC the Central Otago AMP show by my cousin, who's the president, every year, and I love it. I actually co-MC'd with Matt Chisholm earlier this year. Wanaka is obviously a huge part of my upbringing and life, and Canterbury is such an awesome show. But I've been to so many great local shows throughout rural New Zealand, from the top to the bottom, and they are so special. So I'd love you just to get in the comments and go, what is your local AMP show and what do you love about it? Tell us some more, and let's celebrate those AMP shows so we can give them some love. That's what I'd love to do wherever you're watching across the web. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us. If you're new to the show, Sarah's Country is on demand first thing in the morning, and I'm getting so much feedback from around the country that listening on podcast on demand is the most popular way that you are consuming the content, because it's easy. You know, you can have it downloadable to listen offline wherever you are if you're not in reception, and we are going to talk about that later on in the show. Reception, cell phone coverage, connectivity. It's a bugger, isn't it? But we are getting better and better, and I absolutely love how much this new media is being consumed across rural New Zealand. But I've been doing this now for 10 years, and I know that farmers know how to seek out, farmers and growers in rural communities know how to seek out information and connection when they want to. Tell you what, the copper lines across America were built by farmers, not Alexander Bell. That's a fact. Now, turning to our stories tonight, after 7:20, the government has announced nearly $500 million in funding the cleanup of a waterway where evidence says that this waterway is improving. Central Otago High Country farmer Andrew Patterson from Matakanui Station attended Minister Parker and O'Connor's visit to Ophir, and I'm very interested to have him on the show, what he thought and where the Manihirikea River catchment is at. 2020 has brought with it numerous challenges, which has tested rural communities' ability to work and have life online, and what I was just talking about there with connectivity. Joining us after 7:30 is a great guy, Craig Young, CEO for TUANZ, and they have had today the first day of the Rural Connectivity Symposium. And I'd love to hear from Craig to share with them the wide group of industry organisations that come together with the likes of Chorus to say how desperately we need to improve connectivity across this country, particularly so more can watch it Sarah's Country live online. But no, to close the show at 7:45, social media campaigns across Facebook you may have seen where a lot of people have been changing their profile images to bring awareness and put pressure on New Zealand and Australian governments to find the missing crew from Gulf Livestock 1, the missing live export ship off the coast of Japan. We're going to be joined towards the end of the hour from one passionately involved in the campaign. Joining us from Australia is Fee Beard, where she's recently returned herself in her day-to-day job as an onboard short-haul stock person. And she joins the mission of the large family and friends that want these 40 missing crew home. Fee's going to join us towards the end of the hour. But first up on the show, I'm as bewildered as you are that some areas are getting dispensation, multi-million-dollar golf course builders, actors, and most recently, dairy workers allowed access into this country, regardless of border closures, but not our shearers, our nurses, our tractor drivers. What's going on? Chris Lewis, employment spokesman for Federated Farmers, after the break, is going to clarify the work that he has been doing along with his team at Federated Farmers and what this flow-on, actually calculate this flow-on effect about going into this season with incredible labour shortages. This is Sarah's Country.
The recipe for perfect beef and lamb. Take one small fresh country. Make sure it's nice and remote. Now, keep it at the ideal temperature all year round. Next, mix in the farmers. They go perfectly with the nature of this unique place. Add regular sprinkles of rain to really bring out the lush meadow grass. Then let your animals happily graze on this grass all day, every day. And there you have it, New Zealand, the perfect recipe for beef and lamb. Taste pure nature.
Have you've just joined us on Cirrus Country, kia ora and welcome wherever you are around the world. I'm absolutely honoured that we have a global audience here on Cirrus Country, particularly our Northern Hemisphere watchers. And we've got one here, Rosemary Kent. Love the Wanaka show. Been twice when visiting our sons in Queenstown. We live in Wales. Rosemary, last night myself and Joel were having a debate about the longest place name, and he said it was in Wales. Can you type that out for me and I'll see if I can pronounce it? Kaitaia AMP show, awesome indoor sections which encourage wider community participation and include free demonstrations of things like felting. I learned how to felt the other day. It was very exciting. Jock, yes, Wanaka show has always done it for me for many years, followed by the Canterbury AMP show. All right, I want you to send in your local AMP shows and what you love about them. And this is in the face of so many getting cancelled because of COVID. And it's actually, I think, one of the most devastating things that is happening in a domino effect. And let's stop it. Let's bring in level 1 across the country on Monday, and let's ensure that our summer brings us connectivity. Now, I heard this morning from ANZ Chief Economist Sharon Zolan, who she spoke so well and incredible. The New Zealand economy, she said, can contribute half of its economic growth in the past 5 years to the growth simply from having a high immigration. We're a small population that has a large primary sector that pre-COVID had record low unemployment, and we relied heavily on migrant workers. All you do is bring in border closures and all of that turns on its head. It's not just about tourism. It takes a few minutes of browsing through a lot of employment websites post-COVID here in New Zealand to discover the pages and pages of job listings seeking employment in every part of our primary sector due to those borders being shut to our valuable migrant workers. And this is one of my biggest issues I want to continue to follow very closely on Cirrus Country. Not for the fact of workers coming into our country and taking away jobs from Kiwis. It's got nothing to do with it. It's more the flow-on effect of the consequences, not economically, but the health and safety and animal welfare issues that I'm so worried about. And the fact that this is getting parked because of the election is my other biggest worry. But Minister Farfoy, we can't just park up the tractors. Now, the privilege is all mine, he'll love that I said this, to welcome to Cirrus Country employment spokesman Chris Lewis from Federated Farmers. Kia ora, Chris. Let's start. Can we actually outline, because I know you've done a lot of work, you've sent me through, give us a scale, give us some numbers around how serious this is.
Yeah, just for the tractor drivers alone, they're predicting a shortage of 700 to 1,000 drivers shortage. For shearers, at least 200 coming in. And you also got the vets. That's a bit of an unknown quantity, but it could be another 50 to 100 shortage there. So big issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Joel Rock, our producer here's partner Sarah, is a vet, and I know they've done everything they can to keep her here in New Zealand for that absolute fact. Okay, so what's the work that you've been able to do with government and your role lobbying from Federated Farmers?
Since the start of COVID-19 lockdown, we've been on the case of this. We started around the dairy farm workers and employees, and we've been advocating for those. And then it got to about April, and we looked at tractor drivers and shearers. There's going to be a big shortage. So for the last 6 months, we've been hard on this. And talking to the ministers, the ex-minister and now the new current minister, who seems to be very good to deal with. And we've been just pushing the case week by week, day by day. Some days I've talked to Immigration New Zealand 3 times a day just to make sure they hear our message. And we've talked to the ministers a few times, also their senior staff. So it's been a constant battle. And of late, we've been sending them letters just to reinforce how serious of an issue this is for everyone, not just rural communities, but New Zealand.
Chris, I know you're also dairy spokesman for Federated Farmers. We spoke to Roger Parton from Rural Contractors last Wednesday, And that was on the day that Dairy NZ said, we've got migrant workers able to come. It was an absolute kick in the guts on the same day that all these rural contractors were declined applications to be able to bring these people in. How do you deal with that? And when you've got so many people that you try and represent across our sector, and make sure that it's fair?
Look, so I've had a job promotion, no longer dairy chair. That's Wayne Langford. Now I'm on the board at large. So that's a step up from dairy chair, hopefully. So now I represent all industries fairly. So yeah, I can see where they're coming from. I'd be very, very frustrated. And I was frustrated advocating for them. Seeing that. But on the other hand, I had a slight celebration that after 6 months of hard work, we got somewhere. So, you take a step forward, then you take a step back. So, yeah, this is the way in Whare Farmers, when you're advocating on behalf of rural communities and our members, you get these frustrations, and they give you one pat on the back, and on the other hand, they give you a boot up the arse. So, on these announcements, so yeah, I feel for them.
Let's talk about, to stay on agricultural contractors, the grave concern if a lot of this, the inability to cut and harvest feed doesn't happen. What sort of flow-on effect will that have from a health and safety perspective and an animal welfare perspective that you're most concerned about?
Look, last year, Sarah, or this year, we saw the big droughts over most of the North Island and parts of the South Island. So, harvesting feed is so crucial to feeding our livestock. And when you don't harvest at the right time, you can lose tonnage, and you can lose quality. And just the storage of supplement was reinforced, especially during the Hawke's Bay. So, what could happen? Yeah, we could run into shortage of stock food, or if that happens, we may have to import more palm kernel. And the Greens won't like that, will they? Having to rely on those boatloads. So New Zealand is traditionally about growing grass, harvesting it and putting it in the bunker, or growing crops to feed our animals in New Zealand. And we top up with palm kernel. So it's crucially important that in the next couple of weeks, crops grow in the ground, silage gets harvested the next 3-4 months and stored away for, whatever comes this summer. And it's looking like another dry summer, isn't it?
Our next guest, I know, is knee-deep in the middle of shearing, and I'd love to know what feedback are you getting from the Shearers Contractors Association on how they're getting through this season, prelim?
Yeah, look, I was born on a sheep and beef farm, and I've used the handpiece a few times, and I was born, growing up doing that, helping with the dagging, done a bit of shearing, and I'm hopeless, really am hopeless at it. And it's not something I was very good at. So just to say, let's train some New Zealanders. Well, I know how hard of a job it is and backbreaking of a job it is. And I chose not to be that and supposedly took the easy route and milk cows. But you can't just train up people overnight to do this skillful job of taking the wool off sheep and, producing a world-class product. So, it takes years upon years upon years to be that good. And sadly, I never made it. I dropped out. So it is tough. It is hard work. And we need to back our shearers to bring these skilled shearers into the country, but also invest money into training our own. But it's seasonal work. Not everyone wants to do it, do they?
What's Federated Farmers doing to ensure the well-being of our people on the ground through this traumatic time in terms of being able to ensure that health and safety is paramount to our major contractors that we would be absolutely lost without?
Yeah, look, a lot of our elected around the country are also contractors themselves, or obviously use a lot of contractors. So it's something we've all having a conversation with them. Is around the training of drivers. And so behind the scenes, whether it's in the South Island or the North Island, we've been working with MSD, MPI to set up tractor driving courses and encouraging people to join them. But, the people who are on those courses, some have been some gold nuggets, but there's also been some who are not. And so it's like drafting fat lambs and skinny lambs. Not every lamb running through is going to be the fat lamb, and it gets drafted off to be a superstar. So to find these people and train them, it's not an easy task. And when you find them and train them, it does take a few thousand hours to be a master craftsman or a master at baling silage or mowing. So yeah, it's going to be a work in progress, and we're not going to solve it in the next 6 months, despite what politicians tell us.
Well, this is the thing. Going in, as you said, 6 months, we've only got a month and a countdown to an election. In terms of the major parties, where does everybody stand on how we manage health, but also the economy when it comes to immigration that you've been following? I heard Grant Robinson saying we could have international students here as soon as January 2021. Are you getting any feedback that we can pass on to the industry that the hope is around the corner?
I think the biggest issue is having confidence in quarantine. So once they've got the confidence in quarantine, which I think the government has now, then there should be no excuses of bringing these people in. And so you're seeing now they've got some good testing in quarantine, they've got some good processes, and they've got some good facilities. So going forward, if the government believes in what they're doing and how they're running these quarantine facilities, there should be no excuses. They should be able to bring in a few thousand every week New Zealanders and skilled migrants into the country and be no risk to the health of New Zealand. And so in the next few weeks, we'll be pushing hard to make sure that the government stands by their word and backs agriculture, because you look at the financial figures today, it's not pretty reading, is it? This country needs our farmers and our contractors and our shearers and our vets to be working bloody hard to help this economy and keep it going.
Before you leave, Chris, we're talking AMP shows. What's your favourite local AMP show?
Of course, it's going to be the Waikato one, best in the country.
What makes it great? I haven't been to the Waikato.
Well, it's not just an AMP show, but it's also, all the side attractions like the circus, the rides, and all the other stuff, and of course, what makes it is the people, and the characters at the show. So that's why Waikato is the best, and I'm a bit one-eyed on that one.
I think when it comes to your local community, you're allowed to be one-eyed because that to me is pride. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Board at Large and, of course, Employment Spokesman for Federated Farmers, Chris Lewis, there on Serious Country. Now, coming up, the press release reads, the government has joined forces with Central Otago communities to clean up waterways, making the Manyaherekea catchment the third exemplar catchment to be targeted as part of their plan to support community-led programs. We're going to head to Central Otago next, as the word exemplar of a dirty waterway, when I read this, was something I was trying to wrap my head around, as the waterways, I understand, have been improving a lot. We're going to discuss this pre-election lolly scramble when it comes to fresh water with Matakanui Station's Andrew Patterson next here on Serious Country. This is Serious Country.
One of the first things you learn when you live out here
is where to shop and the things you need to live out here.
like electric fencing,
or horse feed,
or bee suits.
children's chook food.
Do you want a couple of these?
Or something stylish to wear. Not everyone's got stuff like this.
But at Farmlands we do, and then some.
So if you need anything to help your farm,
Grow, milk, dredge,
Rhea, come on in.
Because we're out here too.
We're a large deer farm and very proud deer farmer at that. I grew up here as a little boy. It is just an amazing lifestyle. I could never live in a city ever again. Just the big open spaces and just the peacefulness of it all. I think deer are very majestic, very intelligent animal. Having deer that are under pressure or anything like that, or overstocked, you know, they really don't perform as well. You should really be spreading them out on beautiful pastures, keeping them happy. A happy deer is a good deer. And good feed, you know, good grass. We renew our pastures all the time in the paddocks, so we're always getting the best quality grass. Well, I guess in the wild, they don't have the luxury of the grass that we put in front of them here as a farmed animal. I believe that we've got some of the best English type deer in the country, if not the world. to associate our brand with Silver Fern Farms brand is works for us. Without the likes of Silver Fern Farms, then there's no point doing this. So they're very, very important for us. I'm Mark Tapley, very proud suppliers of venison to Silver Fern Farms.
I absolutely love you, Rosemary. I really want to attempt it, but you see, with Māori Language Week, at least I've got the vowels down pat. But not only is it with the world's longest place name, but the particular vowels, I'm sure I'm going to make an episode. You said it can be shortened. Lanfair PG. Okay, we'll roll with that. Now, of course, we're talking about A&P shows. This is agricultural and pastoral shows around New Zealand, and I'm saddened to continuously read about them being cancelled, especially when it's like the Ellesmere show, 150 years they were meant to celebrate this year and cancelled. Ashburton show cancelled, and I'm sure that will not be the last of it. And the uncertainty with COVID, it's heartbreaking for rural communities to lose them so passionately. And I'd love to be able to celebrate what your local A&P show is that you love in the comments wherever you are. Let's celebrate them. All you need to do is put the name in. And if you'd like to tell us why you love them, let us know. I'm going to open this interview with the quote from the press release from Minister David Parker, the Minister for the Environment, just to set the scene going into our next guest to clarify this. He said, "We are fulfilling the government's promise to stop the degradation of our waterways and make measurable improvements within 5 years and return them to health in a generation." Minister David Parker and Minister Damien O'Connor decided to drop by the Ophir Hall in central Otago to discuss dropping $500,000 on the table on a catchment that when I read, I had a drop the mic moment, because I thought, hang on a minute, this area we're talking about has certainly not been one that needs to be made an exemplar. So I picked up the phone to Andrew Patterson, who joins us now, and will clarify this. Andrew, the words "stop the degradation of our waterways" in reference to your local catchment of the Manuhirakia, is this fair?
No, I don't believe it is. The reports and all of the state of the environment that they refer to all goes back to 2011. It's 9 years ago, and there's been significant changes within our catchment, and we have a lot of upgrading of irrigation infrastructure, so the likes of centre pivots instead of flood irrigation and border dike, and all of those are actually helping to improve the water quality. Now, if you look at the Otago Regional Council's actual testing of the river and the Manuhirakia and the Thompsons Creek, the water quality on nearly all of the scales is improving. So E. coli has dropped drastically, and the dissolved reactive phosphate or rock phosphate, DRP, is actually reducing as well. The only one that's making a slight increase is Triple N.
I'd like to understand the next part about make measurable improvements within 5 years. What have they outlined when you attended that meeting at the Ophir Hall of what those measurements and KPIs will be?
Well, this is the ironic thing. The minister was actually asked to help with funding of the testing. So I proposed that there hasn't been enough testing done on the whole catchment, right? So it's very ad hoc, and it's been really only done in a couple of spots. So one is the Thompsons Creek, where it enters the river. One is below that, which is actually below the Amakau wastewater output, and the other one is at the bottom of the river. Now, there is many parts to that river. It is actually a very large catchment, and there is a lot of area that could be done. There could be areas of testing. Now, when I said that, Mr. Parker and we had the regional council chairman there, Andrew Noon, as well, and he said that, would the government help with this? And Parker said, the government doesn't want to be funding the ORC's obligations. Now, it's a little bit ironic that he says that, considering the obligations and the interest he has in the catchment. You'd think he'd want to test to make sure that what he was saying is correct. What I think is going on is he knows it's already improving, and that potentially from 2011 to when they do actually do a whole raft of tests on the river, so they do another state of environment report, they'll actually see an improvement. And he'll take the claim for that, take the benefit for that. My wife actually said to me tonight, Andrew, you have to be positive. You have to say some positive things. And to be positive, him and Damien O'Connor actually are offering $500,000 to the Thompson's catchment, which is going to help to create a wetland area and help with some fencing and some riparian planting at the bottom, so that we have a filter system which allows the Thompsons to improve. Now, the Thompsons is actually one of the red flag creeks in Otago, and it's the only one in central Otago. And it has had a poor record, but it has been improving. And dare I say it has been because of dairying. So dairying has had the money to put the irrigation infrastructure in, so spray irrigation pivots, the like, which put the water on at a low rate, and therefore you don't have the runoff, so you don't have the essentially the stuff that causes the high E. coli levels, so the shit or manure, I should say, being a bit more polite, that is being flushed into the river, and also that you don't have the sediment runoff as well. So you're actually reducing the DRP. And because of that, we've seen an improvement. So since 2017, in the crucial periods between November through to March, the figures have drastically reduced. So they were, and back in the 2005 when ORC started testing the Thompsons, they were actually testing levels during the summer there of 8,000 and 9,000 for E. coli. Now they don't go that far anymore. The scale doesn't go that high. So that shows, they've been testing it for a long time. In 2013, with the advent of increased dairying in the area, we saw a reduction to the 1,500s. And since then, now it's sitting in the below the 1,000 level. So yes, it's not at where it should be, but it is improving. It has been improving quite drastically.
And of course, this was in conjunction with the Central Otago communities. What responsibility is the Otago Regional Council and the Central Otago District Council doing in terms of local town infrastructure as well, and what that could contribute to those waterways?
Yes, so the Omakea wastewater, so 3 years ago before the last election, I had actually done some testing and identified, because it wasn't talked about, it wasn't known. In fact, it was widely disbelieved that a town could actually have their wastewater go directly into a river, okay? And so I did some testing then, and I took it to a few meetings of some environmentalists, and they were shocked. And what kind of transpired from that, and I know that the local council was planning to do some work, and they had in the budget about $240,000. So what they did is they actually have nearly spent $1 million. So they found that it had a hole in the wall, right? So every time they had a flood, it flushed it. It had never been emptied. And it also was not lined. So there was seepage into the outside area. So if you take that into account, going from 3 years ago in the previous election, we may have already seen an improvement just from that. But at the moment, they've also added some other infrastructure in there. So what they've done is they've actually started to aerate it. The only downside to that is potentially that's going to increase the nitrogen output from it. So which will has potential to influence the algae in the river. So In fairness, Central Otago District Council has actually pulled their socks up. Tim Cadogan and the council, the staff there, are very proactive on it. He's been a big supporter of the farmers, and he's actually tested the water in the river himself, so he knows what it's like. And he has actually defended us on numerous occasions, saying that, well, we talk a lot about emotion, but where's the actual evidence? And here we have the evidence, and it is not like you say it is. We have a Fish and Game report just recently that said how badly degraded it was, yet they couldn't refer to any testing, and they've never done a single test themselves. Now, I tested the Manihirakia, the wastewater. I tested it above the wastewater, the Thompsons, and the Manihirakia at the Galloway Bridge. Now, all the tests except for the wastewater came back excellent. You know, it's literally drinkable now. If you had a cast iron stomach, you would drink, or you were thirsty. I reframed it. If you were thirsty, you could drink out of the Manihirakia at the moment.
So therefore, what sort of irony is it of taking $500,000 off the government because it has been parked there, and yet the primary sector being heavily involved in the economic recovery to pay this government debt back?
Well, that's the issue we've got. He's giving $500,000 to do a job that I believe that through our catchment group, the farmers were going to tidy up anyway. We probably wouldn't have had the money to be able to buy the land, to be able to build the wetlands. So that's certainly a positive at the bottom, and that's going to help filter anything that's coming out of it. But we had already identified the issues in the areas that needed to be changed. So I will thank the government for that funding to be able to build that wetland. But we were already working on it, and as I said, we'd already improved things. We still have a wee way to go, but we are certainly making a difference and certainly making improvements.
Andrew, the easiest and quickest question and answer I have to close: what's your favourite AMP show?
Central Otago, which is the Omakea one, and of course it's very well run by a whole lot of women actually, and they do an amazing job of it. Very well run, and it has been growing and going from strength to strength every year. My wife is involved in it, and Dana Patterson is the chairwoman of it, and yeah, it's a fantastic show. Really strong in the sheep and wool, and just a really good day out.
Absolutely. A lot of those ribbons go out to people with the last name Patterson, and among others. Of course, it's fantastic. I love the Central Otago AMP show, and I'd love to hear what yours is in the comments below. Now, coming up on Sarah's Country is the mission to build a clever countryside through connectivity just around the corner. Craig Young from TUANZ is going to join us after day one of the Rural Connectivity Symposium that, due to COVID, surprise, surprise, turned into an online event. How can connectivity be sped up to not leave rural behind? Craig joins us after the break. This is Sarah's Country.
Balance has its own team of innovation specialists. It's our job to lead the way, working with some of the most cutting-edge science and research. We've got partnerships with some of the best suppliers in the world, so our farmers get the very best products for New Zealand farms.
And in every region across the country, the conditions are very different, and farmers and growers' needs are too.
That's why we're always looking for solutions that are just right, like here at our Huntly Service Centre.
And here in Canterbury, we've got a self-service silo, so I can pick up fat when it suits me.
And here in Morrinsville, we've got a world-class mill. That means that we can safely deliver our customers with the freshest, highest quality feed and minerals.
It's about putting the customer first, because that's what drives our business.
We've been focusing on faster turnaround of orders. We've got to get the right products to the right places at the right times.
Here in Taranaki, we've got New Zealand's only urea manufacturing plant. It's where we create our premium sustained fertiliser.
We're supplying nationwide and working locally. By getting to know you and what you want to achieve, we can help you get there.
And with the new My Balance platform, Balance has put my farm at my fingertips.
In fact, we offer support in all sorts of ways, sharing the best nutrition practice with farming families across the country. Whether we're talking about animal health, farm productivity,
or looking after our natural environment, sustainability underpins everything we do. We use our local expertise and the latest tools to help farmers and growers navigate the changing regulations, so you can leave your farm in great shape for the future.
And we can be really accurate, avoiding areas like wetlands and waterways with our award-winning Spread Smart tech. It makes the job far safer, more efficient, and gives you the best results.
When you've got access to that kind of know-how, you've got the support you need to make sure you're farming sustainably. It's that kind of thinking that'll keep us going for generations to come.
Together creating the best soil and feed on earth.
Really pleased we got into this. Thanks for your help, Dave.
It's a good idea, honey. Do you reckon it'll come out? Cover it and tell Compound to leave it 10 minutes. You'll be fine. Good call, Dave.
Good call on getting those security cameras, Dave.
You caught a new one yet?
Yeah, kind of.
When you've got decisions to make, we'll be there to help you make the right call.
I'd go for those ones, Bob. Yeah, good call.
Did you choose these?
Oh, you know.
For great advice and insurance, talk to FMG.
Welcome back to Serious Country. Now, in an aim to have all those key influences in a room to bring that full focus back to the sector New Zealand's economic recovery is all about rural, was today and tomorrow under the 2020 Rural Connectivity Symposium banner. This is where partners such as our Rural Health Alliance, Rural Women, Dairy Women's Network, Young Farmers, Federated Farmers join the likes of Chorus and TUANZ to bang heads together on the real impact that a lack of connectivity has on our rural communities. And I'm looking forward to finding out about their learnings over lockdown. Craig Young, CEO from the Telecommunication Users Association of New Zealand. This is the organisation that sticks up for us to get a fair deal from the telcos, joins us now. Kia ora, Craig, and welcome. Today, day one, tomorrow, another day. Sadly, of course, it's gone online because I know that connectivity face-to-face would have been great. But what was the learnings from day one?
Oh, kia ora, Sarah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that this year we've had to move and use the actual connectivity that we've got and trust it, that it will deliver. And so hopefully it has. We had today we spent the afternoon talking about, what the government's actually doing now and what projects are being rolled out. So we had Minister Farfoy, who's the Minister of Communications, talking about the $65 million that they've just put in to improve connectivity, specifically around what happened in COVID. And many viewers, when we had this discussion, I think last time we were on here, are in that band that are close to some urban areas and were probably part of that first rural broadband initiative, the Vodafone towers, good 5-10 years ago, and that technology really hasn't kept up. And so I'm calling that the stale donut. The bit around the urban areas, it's not going very well. And they've chucked 15 million in there to try and help that, but there's quite a lot more to be done.
How much of it is the gatekeeper mentality of the main telcos that have the ability and the technology and innovation to expand this far more quickly than it needs to be?
Well, I think that's why you've got to look at the project that's running at the moment, which is excitingly called the RBI2 project, which the money is going to the wireless ISPs, and I think we've talked about those before, your local regional player who are, keen to deliver great little services in the areas that they're in, and the RCG, which is delivering what I think is actually world leading. So that's further out. They're building these 4G towers, and the three mobile companies are sharing the technology. So they've put all their spectrum in, they put all their network in, and so what we're getting in those areas is a step forward. It's a great step forward. It's going to deliver really good quality 4G, and because it's all three providers, there's going to be a lot of capacity there. The big problem was, and this is where we heard from Graham Mitchell from Crown Infrastructure Partners, last year we were pretty underwhelmed by the rollout and by the activity. And so he was able to provide some new numbers this year. One of the key ones, though, that a lot of listeners will be interested in is, how many kilometres of highway are covered by this project. And of the project, which is supposed to be finished by next year, they've only done 45% of it. So, and that's up by a third from 33% last year. So, they've really got a lot of work to catch up on. And that's just to get us to some decent 4G coverage in rural New Zealand.
What were some of the learnings from lockdown and how rural New Zealand was able to continue to connect and be productive during that time?
Well, I think we found that there were big chunks that weren't able to, or at least pockets of rural New Zealand that struggled, particularly that donut area that I was talking about, others where there's no coverage. And it comes down to two things, I think, our learnings were. One is there is that issue that we need to improve the capacity and the capability in rural New Zealand, and that's what we continue to argue for. It's getting a little bit tricky now. You can't just throw a big chunk of money and just deliver one big project. And so we're saying to the government, you need to be a bit more careful and clever. Find where people aren't getting coverage and what you can do for them rather than just, a big net, which doesn't always work. And the second thing is people don't always know what's available. And I think that's a perennial issue. And, one of the things that I like to say when I come on your show is, if you're in one of those areas where you're not sure about the coverage, you're not happy with Vodafone, or Spark or one of the big players, have a look at your local wireless ISP and see if they've got coverage in your area, because it could be you could get something much better for a less price.
I shouldn't do this, but hashtag not sponsored post. I have to give a shout out to 2 Degrees, who have a new product called Wi-Fi calling, where basically you will receive calls on your cell phone through your Wi-Fi. I was like, wow, this is a game changer for rural New Zealand. There is so many cool things out there that are literally just new developments, but the communication to rural New Zealand is poor in terms of letting them know these things are available.
And that product is actually a real benefit to rural New Zealand. If you can get a broadband service into your house and you can turn that Wi-Fi calling on, well, then your mobile phone works out of mobile coverage. And only one of the providers has turned it on, whereas they all have the capability to do so. And it was an issue that came up today. It was mentioned in one of the presentations by Mike Smith from Ultimate Broadband. He said, we need you to turn that Wi-Fi calling on because we can provide that service. The other cool thing, just talking about cell phone coverage, is the project that the government's quietly working away on, which is called the Connected Marae project. So they're connecting the marae that apply. They've got about 400 applications at the moment, 254 connected. These are remote, rural. And what they're doing is they're not just putting connectivity in, they're putting Wi-Fi boosters, they're putting cameras, and they're also putting cell boosts. So those sorts of things which will enable the marae to be covered by cell phone coverage. Small pockets, but at least it's there. So there is some good thinking going on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Craig. And hey, best wishes for tomorrow. Sadly, about not having the physical event, but I mean, to be able to showcase the connectivity that is going on and who can connect in. I really appreciate your time. And there's multiple different medias, and Serious Country wants to be all things to all people. And I absolutely love hearing that people cannot watch live potentially. However, they know how to download the podcast to take with them offline on the road. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us wherever you are in the world and however you like to consume the show. Now, coming up to close on Serious Country, the family of a Southland man missing in the East China Sea on Gulf Livestock One has slammed the New Zealand government today for its lack of support and says it has no choice but to prepare its own launch into their own rescue plan. We're going to be joined by Fee Beard, who works on live export ships from Australia. She's one of the many that is part of a social media campaign you may be seeing across your Facebook to save the 40 crew that have gone missing. And she joins us next up on Serious Country. This is Serious Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. And Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Well, there's been a lot of coverage around the blowback here internally within New Zealand's cattle industry in terms of the flow-on effect of cattle being in lockdown themselves and not being able to leave our shores. However, I am gravely concerned that there hasn't been enough media coverage on the 40 crew that have gone missing and believed to still be alive, and that our New Zealand and Australian governments are not putting enough effort into the search. I was circulated, and as I do, and I want to encourage you more and more to send me stuff on social media because I pick it up. And after a show 2 nights ago, I got sent the Fee Beard, who's going to join us next video. It absolutely broke my heart, and then continuously all over today, seeing throughout Facebook the connection I know of to the New Zealanders, but of course the wider Australian, and we know that that live export community is an extremely close family. And Fee joins us now. Fee's a Kiwi based in Australia and works in the live export boats, has recently returned from an endeavour. Welcome to Serious Country, Fee. I know that you've specified to me that you're not behind the petitions and the social media aspect, that you just literally decided, bugger it, I'm going to actually film this and drive some movement home on social media because you were getting frustrated. Can you tell us firstly about your background and your job?
So, hi everybody. I'm Fee. I'm from the North Canterbury, and I was raised in North Canterbury on cattle stations over there, and I came over to Australia 15 years ago, got involved with the cattle industry here, and 10 years ago I took my first voyage on a livestock ship, and I haven't looked back. And so that's how I ended up in the livestock industry. I've worked as a sole stock person on board for 8 years, so meaning that I take the cattle by myself on board the ships. And I saw something on Facebook the other day. I mean, I was in isolation coming back from Indonesia when the news broke, and because I am a Kiwi, and a lot of people know me through my, I have a clothing label, so I have a bit of a following. I'm making clothing for the girls out on the land, and I had a bit of a following, and a lot of people contacted me thinking perhaps I could have been on that boat. Not a great place to be when you hear bad news like this in a 5x5 hotel room. But I've just sort of supported. I've reached out to the Kiwi families, as you do with Kiwis, and I'm a Kiwi stockie, so I reached out to a couple of the families involved and just offered my support, as Kiwis do. And I've managed to stay close with those families. And the other day I just heard they were looking for people to shout out, and they were looking for celebrities actually, and I decided, well, all my followers know that I'm a stock person. I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of the industry, so bugger it, I'll give it a go. Maybe there's somebody in my group that's got some clout, so I made a video.
Fee, what do you think when our Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs here say that they are doing all that they can do?
Look, I think from what I've seen, well, first of all, you've got to say thank you so much to the Japanese Coast Guard. They've done a great job, and there's a cultural issue there too. I don't know what sort of toing and froing they've had with the New Zealand government, but overall I would think you've got two brilliant young blokes, you know, they're the future of our country. They're from good families. They're clean cut. They've played by the rules. Well, I would think, you know, and they've paid their taxes. Their families have worked hard, and I would think that they deserve a little bit more effort than what's been put in, actually. Yeah.
Can you give us an understanding of what it's like when you're on board and you're at the mercy of the captain and the health and safety officer and people around and being at sea? Do you feel safe when you're in that environment and that you know that everything's going to be okay? Do they go to the nth degree?
Yeah, absolutely. I've never had an issue. In 10 years, I've absolutely never had an issue. And I think this is definitely not an industry issue. We need to get that straight. This is a one vessel issue. I can't speculate on what happened leading up to it. I'm sure there's a lot of social media and text messages between this one and that one. But look, I can't speculate. I would hope that the captain made the right decisions. I mean, I would hate to speculate on that really. But one thing I do know is, and this is why I've pushed this, is because I believe that the Kiwis and the Australians, this wasn't amateur hour on the ocean, you know. If there was an emergency, the first people to step up and get things happening would have been the Kiwis and the Australians, yeah. And that is my plight. Yeah, don't give up on these guys.
Yeah, and this is what really touched me with your video that has been circulating and gone viral on social media, was the fact that everyone strongly believes that they are there. Can you give us an understanding of that, or, you know, the life rafts on board and how you believe that they could be safely waiting to be saved?
Look, because there's actually 4, I think, life rafts unaccounted for. And the 3 guys that didn't make it to the muster station, well, there's been 3 guys found. So I believe that those Kiwis would have had a plan, and the Australians. There's a lot of different stories circulating. I've seen the statements that the crew, that the survivors have given, and quite frankly, they're not good enough for the families. You know, these guys, they're speaking Tagalog, they're not aliens, so it's easy to get a translator in there and find out what they've really got to say. For me, I feel like I want more information from the survivors, and that will help us determine whether it's worth, are we searching for bodies or are we doing a search and rescue? And I just feel like, from what I have seen, and I've been privy to some of that information, I just feel like there's not enough, we're not focusing enough on if they have managed to get into a life raft. And there are accounts of them being suited up, ready to go. Those were the last calls that the captain and the crew were getting into life rafts. One of the families has hired an oceanographer, and he, all the calculations are showing that these guys should be around 200 kilometres southeast of the coastal city of Kochi. They have provided this information to the powers to be, and that's all we ask. Come on, get out there and just check that area, put our minds at ease. Actually, I think 2 oceanographers came up with the same coordinates. They didn't know they were working on the same job along those lines, and they've both come up with the same coordinates, So I think it's worth, a young man, any young man is worth a little bit more time than 5 days. I mean, the Japanese Coast Guard have been searching, but they've scaled it down. They're just doing their regular patrols. But I think, we owe it to those kids.
And you're based in Australia. We've had Minister Damien O'Connor put a halt on our livestock exports here, which is having 25,000 cattle in quarantine. That'd be a drop in the ocean compared to what the numbers are in Australia. Has the likes of that happened as well over there?
No, not at all. I mean, we're running a good business here. We're a clean-cut business. Like I said, this isn't an industry issue. This is a vessel issue. And I think that the knee-jerk reaction from the New Zealand government and everybody in this industry over here said straight away, it'll be banned by the end of the day. And standard issue, We need to realise that primary industry, this industry alone, like the export of dairy and breeder cattle to China, brings in $69 million a year. So far this year to New Zealand. We are propping up the country during this time. Primary industries is propping up the country. And putting a halt. I mean, like you say, we've got 25,000, 26,000 head of cattle sitting around waiting to be shipped to wherever, China, wherever. But this is a lawful business.
And
we're not doing anything wrong.
I'm going to take the opportunity to ask, and this is fully just a personal question to you, Fee, and in full respect to the Gulf Livestock One. For those who are critical of live export of cattle, from woman to woman who has been in a position of nurturing and caring for animals on those ships, can you tell us what it's like?
I have seen so much change in the last 10 years. I'm so proud of my industry. I really am. And I think there's the notion of the death ships. Well, that's bullshit. Absolute bullshit. You don't put the money and the effort into providing other nations with a much needed source of protein that they can't get from anywhere else. We're doing a great job. We're the leaders of live export in the world. You take us out of the picture, you allow the doors to open for other nations, and they're not going to give a shit about animals. Anyone that we export cattle to has to follow our rules. That's it. End of story. I'm very proud, and that's one of the reasons I have, I don't want any spotlight, but I would like to think that if I was on a ship and I went missing, that my peers and my friends would do everything they could to find me.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Fee Beard there. And of course, I want to highlight the GoFundMe.com campaign, which is up to nearly $50,000 as the families are looking to put money towards satellite and drone surveillance technology and search and rescue to bring their crew home. The awareness campaign, I do hope, will harness more from the New Zealand and Australian governments, whereby the families of those from New Zealand are struggling desperately at the moment. And my heart goes out from the absolute bottom of my heart to you all who are watching tonight. Whew, it's absolutely heartbreaking. There's nothing more to say than that. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Serious Country around the world, on podcast, on demand, live across multiple different platforms in conjunction with the absolutely amazing and wonderful team that are Farmers Weekly and Global HQ. Head to farmersweekly.co.nz and make sure you subscribe to My Daily Digest so that you can get the latest on the matters that matter most into your inbox every single day. And of course, I'd love to hear from you on email, sarah@seriouscountry.com. And as I said there before, please drop into my social media and forward and share me content that you believe needs a wider audience, because our audience now has got quite large, and hopefully we are able to share those messages far and wide. I look forward to catching up with you again and doing this all over on Monday, and wherever you are shearing, lambing, carving around this beautiful country we call Aotearoa, New Zealand. Take care, look after yourselves, and we will be back next week from 7 o'clock Monday. Good night, go well. This is Sarah's Country.